Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I have another true crime ASMR video for you. Today's video is another recommendation video from Miss Carried Away, as she is known in my comment section. So, this case is very close to home for me, which I feel like when it happens, like even just like in your state, it's like mind-blowing, because I feel like a lot of the time we dissociate with true crime. Like it's more of a story than real life. And these ones that are so close to home, it humbles you. It reminds you that these things can not only happen near you, but to you. So, just be aware. Today's video took place in Buffalo, New York. And with that being said, we will be talking about the bike path killer, Altemio Sanchez. So, today it'll be a little bit different as far as the organization of the video, but the crimes this man committed went unsolved for some time. So, first, we will be talking about the victim that spoke for so many and brought light to the killer behind these crimes. So, as always, I will be adding this video to my True Crime ASMR playlist, where you can find past and future videos in this series. Let's begin. On September 29th, 1990, Linda Yalem, a University of Buffalo sophomore, would leave her dorm around noon to go for a run on the bicycle path. This path winded the University of Buffalo's North Campus and the upper middle class town of Amherst. The path is a scenic 5.5-mile track, and this was one of Yalem's regular runs. She had been training for crossing the finish line of the upcoming New York City Marathon. Yalem's friends would say how the student was careful and she always made sure to run during the day. And she did this run regularly, like every day. In 1989, around the time that Yalem first began running regularly, a 28-year-old investment banker had been savagely raped and beaten in New York City. So Yalem was aware of kind of the risk that she was taking, but she made sure to be safe, and she had told her friends that it would never happen to her. With the big race just more than a month away, Yalem planned to put 15 miles on her New Balance running shoes. This would be before meeting friends later for the movie Beaches, which is such a good movie. and stars Bette Midler. Unfortunately, Yalem had not returned to her dorm after running and would not make the movie. Around 9:30 that evening, her roommates would call campus police to report her missing, and they would organize groups to search the entire 5-mile path and the woods surrounding it. At 11:30 p.m., they still would not have found Linda Yalem and would call the search off until the morning. In the early morning of September 30th, 1990, the search would continue and they would recover Linda's body. When evidence technicians carefully removed a white Nike t-shirt bearing the words "Run Like Hell" that was obscuring the partially nude victim's face, they knew they had found her. Even with the gray duct tape covering her nose and mouth in a crisscross pattern, the collar-length brown hair and dark brown eyes matched the image of Yalem that was on thousands of flyers that the university officials had posted earlier in the day. She was shrouded with her sweatshirt covering her torso. Underneath her sweatshirt, her bra and her t-shirt were lifted up, exposing her breasts. Her pants were pulled down off of her one leg. She had numerous injuries on her face and abrasions and bruises that indicated she tried to fight for her life. Despite her efforts, her assailant cruelly and brutally assaulted her. Her killer put duct tape over both her nose and mouth. This made it so she was unable to gasp for any air. It would later be disclosed by police that she had been sucking so hard for her breath that the duct tape was actually indented into her mouth. So sad. As the killer raped his victim, he inflicted further torment through the use of a handled garrote. And the garrote is a tool that is made with a piece of wood and rope that the killer can wrap around the throat and turn. And as he's turning it, it slowly cuts off the air supply. It's used as a control method on the victim. And in this case, the killer used a double loop garrote. As he would turn it, it would bring the victim in and out of consciousness. So as if he isn't torturing them enough, he put more flair to what he was doing to these women. This weapon would leave signature garrote marks or ligature marks, and these would be across Yalem's neck This tool requires you to be very close and personal to your victim, so you watch them struggle. Forensic psychologist Lou Schlesinger would state the torturous technique carried out on Linda Yalem raises huge concern, obviously, but the use of this weapon in a crime is not only slow, but an inefficient way to kill someone. It not only takes a long time, but the victim could fight their way out of it. This act shows the sadistic mind of a killer rapist. The ligature marks on Linda Yalem would be a repeated nightmare for authorities, as these marks had been seen before. Forensic evidence collected at 4 of the 6 previous crime scenes would later confirm their hunch, but Amherst police detectives spotted something of vital importance to their investigation even before Linda Yalem's body was taken to the coroner's office for the autopsy. This would be the double ligature marks on her neck. It would soon be confirmed that it was him, the bike path killer, the bike path rapist. Both names apply. And he was now a killer. This was his first killing. And it had been 4 months since the last known attack. A 32-year-old woman had been beaten and sexually assaulted along the path. Joggers would hear the sounds of a woman and would go and investigate. And they would find a married advertising executive in a clearing about 50 feet in the woods near the 2.7 mile marker on the bicycle path. And she was barely alive. The victim was unconscious for more than 6 hours, and doctors were unsure if she would ever wake up. When she finally came to, she told police that she couldn't recall anything that happened after some sort of rope or cord was wrapped around her neck by an attacker she could not see. The garrote, which rendered the women unconscious by briefly cutting off the supply of blood to her brain, left deep impressions in the victim's neck, 2 of them. And when seeing the ligature marks on this victim, it was only a redo, yet again, of a prior case that occurred in August 1989. A 14-year-old Amherst girl on her way to cheerleading. She was dragged off the bicycle path near the 5.3 mile marker, and she was raped. 3 months earlier, a 15-year-old high school student was raped in a similar manner in Buffalo. There was one victim in 1988, another 16-year-old girl who was raped in the same area of Buffalo. The first 2 two victims, a 44-year-old jogger in Buffalo and a 17-year-old high school student in Hamburg, respectively. They were both attacked a month apart in 1986. One of the victims was Susie Coggins, who was attacked in 1986. She would be able to give a first-hand account of the fight for her life against the killer. She would see the killer running towards her with a rope. He would wrap the rope around her neck from behind and drag her through the woods and away from the path. The killer would then ask her questions like her age and if she was a virgin. Susie would then be raped, and when it was over, she would ask the killer, what happens now? And he would say nothing. It would be years later, after Linda Yalom's murder, that the case of the bike path killer would remain unsolved. After her murder, even 12 years later, they had 15 detectives on the case. They consulted Buffalo police about the rapes in the area. They checked and rechecked DNA databases across the country and still do repeatedly. That whole time they were just rechecking and they weren't really getting anywhere. They questioned known sexual offenders within a 50-mile radius, and police even checked logs of Canadian border crossings on the dates of each attack, which I don't understand why that's pertinent. Anyway, a media frenzy after Linda Yalom's murder brought in thousands of tips, and detectives chased down leads until they had eliminated more than 1,500 suspects by airtight alibis or DNA. Ray Klimczak, who retired as a detective sergeant this May, remembers getting bitten by bugs while he and other Amherst investigators spent many days dressed in full camouflage, conducting surveillance in the woods adjacent to the Amherst bicycle path. Sometimes deer grazed just feet away, so they were trying to find this man. Police had a description of a suspect, but it could not be more common. A white man, 5 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 11 inches tall, 30 to 40 years old, athletic, medium build, dark hair, a mustache, and thick brows. Throughout all his attacks, he never attempted disguising himself. This led detectives to believe that the suspect lived elsewhere and only came around when impulses moved him. So he didn't know anybody, so he didn't care. In 1991, Klimczak, the lead detective of the case, spent 3 days at the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, briefing 11 criminal profilers training there. He reviewed what police knew about the suspect, which was that he had type O blood in every case except the Yalem case. He attacked his victim between 7:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. and he always attacked between May and October. He apparently picked his victims randomly, but pre-selected spots for these sexual assaults. During several, he forced victims to areas where he had pre-cut strips of medical or duct tape. To his victims, he identified himself as Dave once and indicated that he had served prison time for rape and murder. Gross. The ligature, some type of wire or cord that did not leave fibers, was used to keep the first few victims from screaming, but later to bring women in and out of consciousness during the rapes. Police believe Yalem struggled fiercely and died because she was struggling. Because you have to think, if she was fighting so hard, she'd be out of breath. And with the duct tape over her mouth, she's like, just sucking in the duct tape. It's so sad. Typically, the rapist would sneak up from behind, quickly double wrapping the garrote around the victim's neck before pulling her backwards. He always took the ligature with him. The suspect left his DNA and other evidence at 4 of the crime scenes. FBI experts told Klimczak that the manner in which the garrote was used suggested their suspect had medical or military training. The rapist had to know that by cutting off blood to his victim's brain for 7 to 10 seconds, she'd be rendered unconscious. Much longer, she'd be dead. The profilers also agreed that he was probably single, had failed relationships with women, and either lived on the west side of Buffalo, where 3 of the attacks occurred, or had connections to the neighborhood. Based on the pattern of attack, the profilers believed the suspect was hunting unfamiliar ground, and the rapist proved them right. 4 years after Linda Yalem's death, October 19th, 1994, a man fitting the rapist's description confronted a 14-year-old Riverside High School student taking a shortcut to a convenience store. The path was near railroad tracks, where the 3rd and 4th Buffalo victims were attacked in 1988. want to say, I don't understand why. I feel like it's common knowledge that sex workers are not represented by our justice system very well. And I think that's disgusting that that is a basis. Like, that's common knowledge. Everybody knows that. And they're still people. They're still being wrongfully murdered. It's murder. Like, why does your profession change that? I don't. And it's always a discussion, like, that they're in a risky line of work. And what? If someone was, I'm trying to think, jumping out of airplanes for a living and they were tossed out of the airplane because someone murdered them, you would still be like, you wouldn't, you'd be like, oh, that's their line of work, risky. That's probably what happened. Like, get a grip. Anyway, because of this oversight, detectives would be unaware to the fact that one of Jane Mess's regular clients was the bike path killer, rapist, both. And he was one of her regular clients, who was a local family man, Altemio Sanchez, who was leading a double life. Altemio Sanchez was a family man who was born in Puerto Rico in 1958. He came from a very toxic and abusive home. Altemio was one of 4 children, and his mother would verbally abuse him and remind him often authorities would ask the man who was driving the car, and this would be the first time authorities had heard the name Altemio Sanchez. Authorities would ask Sanchez for a DNA sample, and the sample would be an exact match. Sanchez would be arrested, and many members in the community would take to public TV interviews stating that authorities had the wrong man. Although after his arrests, those who had witnessed the dark side of Altemio were met with relief as they saw the man from their nightmares pass the screen as being arrested. On January 15th, 2007, a police task force in Erie County, New York, arrested Sanchez and charged him with the murders of Yalem, Mazur, and Diver. On January 19th, 2007, an Erie County grand jury voted to indict Sanchez. In court, Sanchez played the part of a battered man and held his head low. Prosecution would attack the nature of Sanchez's murders, which showed the dark side that he did not let the average person see. Many of the rapes attributed to Sanchez were unprosecuted due to the statute of limitations on the prosecution of rape that was in effect in New York during the time those crimes were committed. Although the statute of limitations in New York has since been changed, however, it cannot be applied to retroactively for the rapes of that time. There's no statute of limitations, however, on homicides, and therefore they were able to prosecute him for the killings of Yalem, Mazur, and Diver. On May 17th, 2007, Sanchez pled guilty to the murders of Yalem, Mazur, and Diver in a surprise confession. Sanchez mumbled his confessions in court through tears. In court, Sanchez was represented by attorney Andrew Lotempio, who denied Sanchez's guilt regarding all of the rapes and murders for which he was responsible to. Lotempio later said that Sanchez had a troubled childhood and had a traumatic life experience when he was 12 years old and had deep-seated resentment toward women. Lotempio also said that he was not making excuses for Sanchez. On August 15th, 2007, Sanchez was sentenced to 75 years to life in prison. He was sentenced by New York State Supreme Court Justice Christopher J. Burns, and he is currently imprisoned at the Clinton Correctional Facility in the Adirondack Mountains of New York State. It has been said that he may be moved to a facility closer to his family if he confesses to further murders. So, he is away, thank goodness. And that is today's video. Quite a long one, but I really wanted to hit all the facts of this case, hit every detective's, I watched multiple documentaries and lots of articles because I wanted to hit every angle of this case. This case was very interesting, and as I said earlier, close to home as well. It blows my mind that the people are able to lead such drastically different lives and just switch on and off this side of them that their families and neighbors and friends just have never seen. It's been proven, but I'm just gonna say it again, that trauma really do be creating psychopaths. And I think especially in children, if they grow up in a traumatic, if they grow up with a narcissist, which he did, it pushes them to just psychologically be broken. And it's not an excuse at all for what he did, but it's a reason for why he can't be with the general public.